Chapter 125, The Worship Center, Part 3. Exodus chapter 39, verses 1 to 43. And of the blue, and purple, and scarlet they made cloths of service, to do service in the holy place, and made the holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the ephod of gold, blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen. And they did beat the gold into thin plates, and cut it into wires, to work it in the blue, and in the purple, and in the scarlet, and in the fine linen, with cunning work. They made shoulder pieces for it, to couple it together. By the two edges was it coupled together. And the curious girdle of his ephod that was upon it was of the same, according to the work thereof, of gold, blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen, as the Lord commanded Moses. And they wrought onyx stones enclosed in arches of gold, graven, as signets are graven, with the names of the children of Israel. And he put them on the shoulders of the ephod, that they should be stones for a memorial to the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the breastplate of cunning work, like the work of the ephod, of gold, blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen. It was foursquare. They made the breastplate double. A span was the length thereof, and a span the breadth thereof, being doubled. And they set in it 4 rows of stones. The first row was a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This was the first row. And the second row an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row a ligure, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in arches of gold in their enclosings. And the stones were according to the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet, every one with his name, according to the 12 tribes. And they made upon the breastplate chains at the ends of wreathen work of pure gold. And they made 2 arches of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings in the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 wreathen chains of gold in the 2 rings on the end of the breastplate. And the 2 ends of the 2 wreathen chains they fastened in the 2 arches, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate upon the border of it, which was on the side of the ephod inward. And they made 2 golden rings, and put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, toward the forepart of it, over against the other coupling thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they did bind the breastplates by his rings unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it might be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and that the breastplate might not be loosed from the ephod, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the robe of the ephod of woven work, all of blue. And there was an hole in the midst of the robe, as the hole of an habergeon, with the band round about the hole, that it should not rend. And they made upon the hems of the robe pomegranates of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and twisted linen. And they made bells of pure gold, and put the bells between the pomegranates upon the hem of the robe, round about between the pomegranates. A bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, round about the hem of the robe to minister in, as the Lord commanded Moses. And they made coats of fine linen of woven work for Aaron and for his sons. And a mitre of fine linen, and goodly bonnets of fine linen, and linen breeches of fine twined linen. And a girdle of fine twined linen, and blue, and purple, and scarlet of needlework, as the Lord commanded Moses. And they made the place of the holy crown of pure gold, and wrote upon it in a writing, like to the engravings of a signet, Holiness to the Lord. And they tied unto it a lace of blue to fasten it on high upon the mitre, as the Lord commanded Moses. Thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. And they brought the tabernacle unto Moses, the tent and all his furniture, his taches, his boards, his bars, and his pillars, and his sockets, and the covering of rams' skins dyed red, and the covering of badgers' skins, and the veil of the covering, the ark of the testimony, and the staves thereof, and the mercy seat, the table, and all the vessels thereof, and the shewbread, the pure candlestick with the lamps thereof, even the lamps to be set in order, and all the vessels thereof, and the oil for light, and the golden altar, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the hanging for the tabernacle door, the brazen altar, and his grate of brass, his staves, and all his vessels, the laver and his foot, the hangings of the court, his pillars, and his sockets, and the hanging for the court gate, his cords and his pins, and all the vessels of the service of the tabernacle for the tent of the congregation, the cloths of service to do service in the holy place, and the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and his sons' garments to minister in the priest's office, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel made all the work. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord had commanded, even so had they done it. And Moses blessed them. Exodus chapter 39, verses 1 to 43. Exodus chapter 39, verses 1 to 32, describes the making of the priestly vestments. This chapter has a sevenfold refrain. As the Lord commanded Moses, verses 1, 7, 21, 26, 29, 31, and 32. This is followed by the summary statements of verses 42 and 43, where essentially the same statement appears. Again, in Exodus 40, we have also this sevenfold refrain, verses 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 29, 32, with the same general statement as a prefix in verse 16. The stress on strict obedience is thus very apparent. In verse 43, we are told that, at the conclusion of the work, Moses blessed them. A blessing and a benediction are basically the same thing. A benediction is a form of prayer which invokes God's blessing upon persons, things, or ventures. At one time, both in Israel and Christendom, a blessing or benediction was a central part of every marriage, birth, baptism, and other like events. Whereas now wedding guests congratulate the bride and groom, it was once customary for the heads of households, the husband and the wife, to bless the young couple. The reception line was a blessing line. In Luke chapter 1, verse 21 following, we have a congregation waiting for Zacharias' blessing. Among men or adults, the blessing came from a superior to an inferior and was very important. It meant that the father, pastor, mother, employer, or leader had to see himself or herself as a channel of grace to all under his or her authority. The blessing was the climax of a life of grace to all those within one's jurisdiction. The husband was to be a blessing to his wife and children, the mother to her family, and so on. Esau, normally heedless of most things, was greatly upset that Jacob had gained Isaac's blessing, and with an exceeding bitter cry said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. Genesis chapter 27, verse 34. Blessing and inheritance were cognate. Things blessed were thereby separated for a holy purpose. The blessing of food is to separate the food to a holy use, namely to feed and strengthen us as members of Christ's body and kingdom. A blessing is received with bowed head as a reverential acceptance of God's presence in and through the benediction. Usually a hand or both hands are raised in a blessing, or in certain instances, placed on the head of the recipient. Here we have a blessing of good workmanship. The artisans gave their best abilities to God's service, and God sanctifies them for doing so. He blesses them. At one time, sculptors, painters, musicians, and others prayed for a blessing as they began their work. Benedictions were once routine for new enterprises. We now have a pale relic of this in groundbreaking ceremonies. Blessings on travellers were also once commonplace. Now, all this is very closely related to the concept of the centre. When the biblical faith is central to a society, then blessings go out from the centre into all society. At one time, the blessing of boats, of lawyers, doctors, teachers, and others, of new vineyards, orchards, and houses, and more was routine. All this was related to the premise set forth in Psalm 127, verse 1. Except the Lord build a house, they labour in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. The triune God must be at the centre of all things, and men must look to him for their blessings, and, in return, bless God by serving him, by their gifts, and by their faithfulness. The modern state is now at the centre of society, and its forms of blessings are subsidies, grants, and entitlements. Thus, the new temple is legislature, congress, or parliament, and the blessing is a form of purchase. In the United States, the shift from the Christian centre to a humanistic and statist one was completed in the administration of President John F. Kennedy, who closely followed the anti-Christian premises of Daniel Bell. In particular, two of Bell's premises were clearly stressed by Kennedy. First, society's problems were now ostensibly no longer moral ones, but rather technological in nature. A trained bureaucracy of experts would henceforth solve all social problems. No doubt Bell meant men like himself. Second, Bell removed Christianity not only from the centre of society, but also from society altogether. It was now apparently peripheral and a matter of taste, comparable to a taste for jazz or for a particular school of art. The non-Christian state was now the centre. Since then, since Kennedy especially, society has been taught to look to the state as its centre, and statist grants or blessings to most sectors of society have proliferated. This has meant a shift from responsibility under God to irresponsibility and a dependence on the state. In Exodus chapter 39, verses 1 to 31, the making of Aaron's robes is narrated. The human agency of the transmission of God's blessings to society was a high priest. Hence, his sins were the most serious in God's sight, together with those of any other priest. Leviticus chapter 4, verses 3 to 12. This is restated by Peter. Judgment must begin at the house of God. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17. Every detail of the priestly garments, the sanctuary's construction and the life of the priest is strictly governed because he is required to keep holy the line of blessings to the people. In Leviticus chapter 10, verses 1 and 2, we see God's death penalty against two of Aaron's sons for their corrupt practices. To corrupt the center is to contaminate all of society. This makes clear how great God's judgment is and will be on all false centers such as the modern humanistic state. We have some interesting details given to us. In verse 3, we read that the gold leaf was hammered out and cut into fine thread. In verse 30, the place of the holy crown for the high priest reads, Holiness to the Lord. The center is required to be especially holy. Umberto Cassuto called attention to the deliberate parallels here and in Genesis. Genesis chapter 1 verse 31 is echoed in Exodus chapter 39 verse 43. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord had commanded, even so had they done it. Exodus chapter 39 verse 43. This is not the only parallel. Thus, and God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 22. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. And Moses blessed them. Exodus chapter 39, verse 43. As Cassuto makes clear, these are deliberate parallels. God created heaven and earth. Very good. Genesis chapter 1 verse 31. Now this fallen world must be reclaimed and restored by covenant man, dominion man, to God's law and government. The first and key step towards that restoration is to build a sanctuary, the center of God's government, justice and law. The sanctuary must be kept holy so that the blessing, God's grace and providential care may go forth to the whole of society. Where the center is false, instead of a blessing, a curse goes out, whether it be church or state which claims to be central. Because this is totally God's world, both curses and blessings are inescapably a part of it. These chapters on the sanctuary are not popular with the church because they contain no comforting verses or promises, and men want things to speak to the heart. Their test is, does it interest me, and is it relevant to my concerns? This makes man the criterion, not God, and Scripture must then, for these people, please man rather than declare God's holy purposes. This attitude marked Jews of old and also churchmen. As Alexander Carson, circa 1776 to 1844, once observed, Baxter says that the Jews were in the habit of casting the book of Esther to the ground before reading it to express their sense of its deficiency in wanting the name of God, and the thought is quite in the style of Jewish piety and of the human wisdom of Christians. God does not speak to interest us, but to command us. We cannot limit our interest to a few favourite passages or books of the Bible. We then hear only what we want to hear and no more. Note: blessings are so important in Scripture and in life that a further word is of necessity to be noted. First, the primary and essential source of all blessing is by God and from God. It expresses His favour, grace, and ministration to men and things. It is the direct and particular act of God, an expression of His especial benediction and care. Second, man, the recipient of God's grace and blessings, must pass on that benediction to those around and under him. Because the source of all blessings is God, the validity of a blessing by man rests entirely on faithfulness to God's law word. We cannot bless those whom God curses without becoming ourselves accursed. Our function in blessing is ministerial, not legislative. We cannot create the conditions for a blessing nor violate God's terms. We cannot legislate because reality is not our creation, and neither law nor benediction can legitimately be our creation. We can minister on God's terms, and we can bless according to His word. Third, because blessings are in terms of God's providential government and care, we can, by faithfully living in terms of God's grace and law word, bless God by serving Him and being His ministers in our respective vocations. Psalm 103 calls for us to bless God with all our being in gratitude and joy. The offertory hymn, "We give Thee but Thine own, whatever gifts we bring," sums up the essence of man blessing God by his grateful spirit and acts.